March 15, 1944, 9:43 hours. 28,000 feet above central Germany. Second Lieutenant Charles McCoral, age 19, was alone. His wingman had aborted with engine trouble over Belgium. The formation had moved ahead. The radio chatter, frantic calls about bandits, break commands, position reports, told him the Luftwaffe was up in force. And now, banking left to rejoin any friendly element he could find, he saw them. 9 190s. Climbing back up after their first pass on the bombers. Preparing for another attack. They had not seen him yet. McCoral was positioned perfectly 2,000 feet above them, sun at his back, speed building in a shallow dive. Every tactical manual said the same thing: never engage alone, call for help, wait for your wingman, survive to fight another day. But the bombers below were still under attack. Men were dying. He did not know that in the next 47 seconds, he would discover something that contradicted everything the veterans had told him that morning. That being underestimated was not a weakness. It was an advantage. McCoral had arrived at airfield 11 hours earlier. Hair, soft features, a face that still carried the roundness of adolescence. The ground crews took one look and started calling him Baby Face. The Squadron Commander Major had shaken his head when reviewing McCoral's file. 19 years old, 180 hours total time. 0 combat experience. Had assigned him to captain's flight with explicit instructions: stay on your leader's wing, keep your mouth shut, and try not to get killed on your first mission. The other pilots barely acknowledged him. One muttered something about sending children to do men's work. Another gave him a week if he was lucky. McCoral understood their skepticism. He looked exactly like what he was, a replacement, fresh from stateside training, with no business in the skies over Germany where veteran Luftwaffe pilots with 50, 100, 200 kills were hunting anything wearing American markings. But what they could not see from his baby face was the 4,000 hours he had logged before joining the Army Air Force. His father owned a small airfield in Pennsylvania. McCoral had soloed in a Piper Cub at 15. By 17, he had been crop dusting, doing aerobatics at county fairs, and teaching basic flight to paying students. He understood energy management, angles of attack, and deflection shooting in ways that could not be taught in a classroom. He had spent more time alone in the air than most of the squadron had spent flying total. He just looked too young for anyone to believe it. The mission brief had been straightforward: escort B-17s deep into Germany, engage enemy fighters, protect the bombers at all costs. McCoral had suited up, climbed into P-51B Q Peter Mike, and taken off in formation. Everything was fine until his engine started smoking over Belgium. Stay with the group, radioed as he turned back toward England. Link up with Red Flight. But by the time McCoral tried to join Red Flight, they had already moved 4 miles ahead. The formation was stretched thin. Radio discipline was breaking down as multiple engagements erupted. McCoral climbed to 28,000 feet, alone. Below him, the bomber stream stretched toward the target, a marshalling yard near Frankfurt. Above him, contrails marked where other Mustangs were dogfighting German interceptors. And directly ahead, at 26,000 feet, 9 FW-190s were reforming. The FW-190 was one of the most lethal fighters Germany produced. Top speed at altitude, 408. Rate of climb, 2,350 feet per minute. Armament, 2 13 machine guns plus 4 20 cannons. Designed for brutal hit-and-run attacks on bomber formations, then rapid climbs back to altitude before escorts could respond. The pilots flying them in March 1944 were not novices. Units were being pulled back from the Eastern Front, men who had survived combat against Soviet fighters, who understood energy tactics, who knew how to work as a team to isolate and destroy American escorts. 9 of them operating together could shred a lone P-51 in seconds. Against a 19-year-old replacement pilot on his first combat mission. The engagement should have lasted 30 seconds. McCoral had altitude, speed, position, and one thing the 9 German pilots did not expect. He attacked. He rolled inverted and dove. 350, 400, 450. The 9 FW-190s grew larger in his gun sight. Tight formation, climbing back up after their bomber pass, expecting American escorts to be occupied elsewhere. Coral picked the trailing aircraft, centered the. Squeezed the trigger. 6.50 caliber machine guns hammered. 3,000 rounds per minute combined fire. The first burst missed, high and right. He adjusted, fired again. Tracers walked up the fuselage of the FW-190. Pieces flew off. Smoke erupted from the cowling. The German fighter rolled over and fell away, trailing fire. The other 8 scattered. They had not expected an attack from above. Their formation broke apart, some diving, some breaking hard left, one climbing straight up in a chandelle. Coral kept his speed, slashed through their formation, selected a second target breaking right, fired a 2-second burst, saw strikes on the wing route. That fighter broke off, streaming smoke. 2 down, 7 left. That was when they realized what was happening. A single Mustang. Attacking 9 of them. The initial shock gave way to rage. The remaining 7 FW-190s turned back toward Coral, who was now at their altitude with his speed bleeding off. 7 experienced German fighter pilots against 1 American teenager. The radios erupted. "Abort, abort," someone was screaming in German. "He's too fast." But they were not aborting. They were converging. Coral understood immediately he could not dogfight them. The P-51's advantage was speed and high-altitude performance. In a turning fight against 7 FW-190s, with their superior low-speed handling and devastating cannon firepower, he would last maybe 1 full turn before being cut apart. So he did not turn. He extended. Nose down, full throttle. The Merlin engine screamed to maximum power 1490 horsepower at war emergency boost. The airspeed indicator climbed past 450. The FW-190s gave chase, but the P-51 was pulling away. At 450 plus, the Mustang had a 40-50 advantage over the FW-190. The gap opened, 500 yards, 800 yards, 1,200 yards. Once he had sufficient separation 3 miles, roughly 30 seconds at his current speed, Coral pulled up hard into a climbing turn, bleeding his excess speed back into altitude. He climbed to 30,000 feet. Looked back. The 7 FW-190s were reforming below him at 27,000 feet, preparing to resume their attack on the bombers. Coral rolled inverted and dove again. This time they saw him coming. But they were committed to their attack run. Breaking off meant abandoning the bombers, their entire mission objective. Coral picked a third target, fired, missed. Adjusted, fired again. Strikes on the tail. The FW-190 shuddered, then snap-rolled out of control. 3 down. The remaining 6 broke off their bomber attack and turned back toward Coral, furious now, determined to kill this lone American who kept attacking them. But Coral was already extending again. Diving away, building speed, putting distance between himself and the German fighters before they could close within cannon range. This happened 3 more times. Coral would extend, climb back to altitude, dive on the FW-190 formation, fire a burst, damage, or destroy another aircraft, then extend again before the Germans could coordinate a response. It was not dogfighting. It was not aerial combat the way anyone taught it. It was geometry, physics, speed management. Using the P-51's superior high-speed performance to maintain the initiative, dictating the engagement terms, never allowing the FW-190s to force him into their preferred fight. By the time Coral's ammunition ran dry, 5 of the 9 FW-190s were destroyed or damaged beyond combat capability. The remaining 4 broke off and fled toward Germany. Coral turned back toward England alone, his aircraft untouched. Total engagement time, 8 minutes. When Coral landed at The gun camera footage was immediately pulled and developed. The squadron intelligence officer watched it twice, then called Major. Watched it. Said nothing, called the group commander. By that evening, every pilot in the 4th Fighter Group had seen the footage. 9 FW-190s, 1 P-51. 1 pilot. 5 confirmed kills on his first combat mission. The mechanics stopped laughing. The veteran stopped calling him babyface. And Major, who 12 hours earlier had given Coral a week to live, wrote in his after-action report. Second, Coral demonstrated tactical judgment and combat discipline, far exceeding his age and experience. His ability to manage energy states while engaging multiple hostile aircraft resulted in one of the most effective single-pilot engagements recorded by this unit. But the real question was simpler. How did a 19-year-old replacement pilot, on his first combat mission, survive an engagement that should have killed him in 30 seconds? The answer was not in the aircraft. The P-51 Mustang was exceptional, arguably the best escort fighter of the war. But the FW-190 was also exceptional, and there were 9 of them. The answer was not in training. Coral had 180 hours of military flight time. The average Luftwaffe fighter pilot in March 1944 had 200+ hours of combat experience. Some had been flying since 1940. The answer was in what the veterans had failed to recognize when they looked at Coral's baby face. Experience and confidence are not the same thing. Confidence, the kind the veterans possessed, was built on past success. On dogfights won, enemies killed, missions survived. It manifested as instincts, patterns, muscle memory. But confidence could also create rigidity. The veterans knew the right way to fight. They knew what worked. They knew what was supposed to happen. When something unexpected occurred, when a lone replacement pilot attacked 9 FW-190s instead of running, the Germans' confidence became confusion. Why is he attacking? He should be running. This doesn't make sense. For critical seconds, they hesitated. Coral did not have confidence. He had something more valuable in that moment. Clarity. He saw the tactical situation without the filter of how it's supposed to be. He did not think about what a replacement pilot should or should not do. He did not worry about reputation or expectations. He saw altitude advantage, speed advantage, surprise advantage. He calculated dive angle, deflection, energy management, extension parameters. He acted. No hesitation, no second guessing. No thought about what the veterans would say if he failed. Just physics and geometry and 4,000 hours of flight time that taught him to trust the aircraft's capabilities more than anyone else's opinions. The veterans had taught him to stay with your wingman and never engage alone, because those rules kept inexperienced pilots alive. But Coral was not inexperienced at flying. He was just inexperienced at combat. And in that specific engagement, flying skill mattered more than combat experience. Over the next 4 months, Coral flew 73 more combat missions. He shot down 16 more German aircraft, damaged 11 others. His final tally, 21 confirmed kills, making him one of the youngest aces in the 8th Air Force. But the statistics do not capture what happened to him between March and July 1944. The baby-faced kid who climbed into Q. Peter Mike on his first mission became something harder. The other pilots stopped calling him by name. They called him the Kid, or the Quiet One, because he rarely spoke outside of mission briefings. He watched friends die. Captain, whose engine had failed on that first mission, was shot down over France in April. His parachute failed. Lieutenant, who had given Coral a week if he was lucky, was killed by flak over Berlin in May. By June, most of the squadron that had mocked Coral on his first day was gone, transferred, wounded, killed, or grounded with combat fatigue. The new replacements arriving looked at Coral, now 20 years old, with 21 kills and the Distinguished Flying Cross, the same way the veterans had looked at him 4 months earlier. They saw an ace. A killer, someone who belonged. They did not see the nightmares, the weight, the faces in the gun camera footage. They did not understand that killing 21 men had not made him stronger. It had made him quieter. Charles McCoral survived the war. He returned to Pennsylvania in 1945, enrolled in college, and tried to build a normal life, but he never stopped flying. He bought a Piper Cub, the same type he had learned in as a teenager, and flew alone over the same fields where he had first soloed at 15. The sky was the only place where the memories did not follow. In the decades after the war, McCoral rarely spoke about his service. He did not attend reunions. He did not give interviews. When people learned he had been an ace, they asked what it was like to be a hero. He told them it was not like anything. It was a job. He did it because it needed to be done. But once, late in his life, a young pilot approached him at an air show. The pilot was about to deploy overseas. He was nervous. He asked McCoral for advice. McCoral looked at him, this kid with a fresh uniform and uncertain eyes, and saw himself at 19, standing on the tarmac surrounded by men who did not believe in him. He told the young pilot, "Trust yourself. Remember your training. Stay calm when everything around you is chaos. And if you find yourself alone, outnumbered, with no one to help, remember that fear and competence are not the same thing. Being young does not mean being weak. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act in spite of it." The young pilot thanked him and walked away. McCoral watched him go, hoping the lessons paid for in blood over Germany would not be forgotten. Charles McCoral died in 2003 at age 78. His obituary mentioned his service, his medals, his record as an ace. It did not mention the nightmares, the weight he carried, the faces that never left him. It did not mention that he had been 19 when he fought 9 enemy fighters alone and lived to tell about it. But the story survived. It was passed down among fighter pilots, told in ready rooms and hangar bars, as a reminder that youth is not weakness, that skill is not the same as age, that sometimes the most dangerous pilot in the sky is the one no one expects. The official records list McCoral's kills, his missions, his awards. But the numbers do not capture what happened that March morning in 1944, when a teenager with a baby face climbed into a fighter and discovered something the veterans had forgotten. Competence does not require permission. War does not care about seniority or experience. It only cares about who can think faster, shoot, and survive longer. McCoral survived because he understood that. He survived because when everyone else saw a child, he saw a pilot. He survived because he did not let others' expectations define his capabilities. The lesson is not that youth should be sent to war. The lesson is that when pressure demands clarity, confidence built on past success can become a liability. The veteran's instincts, formed through repetition and survival, can create blind spots. They know what worked before. They expect patterns to repeat. But war is chaos, and sometimes the person who survives is not the most experienced. It is the one who sees the situation most clearly. McCoral never wanted to be a hero. He wanted to fly. The war took that from him, turned it into something darker, stained with violence and loss. But it also revealed something essential, that in moments of crisis, character is tested in ways that peacetime never demands. That some people, when everything is on the line, rise to the moment not because they are special, but because they refuse to quit. They mocked him for being too young. He proved them wrong at 28,000 feet, alone against 9, with nothing but skill and will and a P-51 that answered to his hands. And when the smoke cleared and the film was developed and the truth was undeniable, no one ever questioned him again. That is not just a war story. It is a reminder that competence speaks louder than age. That assumptions about capability based on appearance are often wrong. That sometimes the quiet one in the corner, the one no one takes seriously, might be the one who changes everything. Charles McCoral flew into history on his first day of combat. But he earned his place there one decision at a time, one burst of gunfire, one impossible turn. One refusal to quit when quitting was the logical choice. And in doing so, he left proof that courage is not inherited or awarded. It is chosen in the moment when the odds are impossible and no one is watching. That choice, made at 19 over the skies of Germany, echoes still. If this story resonated with you, I'd appreciate your support. Hit the like button and subscribe for more untold stories from World War II, the battles, the decisions, and the people who changed history. What other stories from the air war should I cover next? Drop your suggestions in the comments below. And if you found value in Coral's story, share it with someone who might need the reminder that competence has no age limit. Thanks for watching,